Okay, I'm going to get the slideshow going.
We're recording, and now I'm going to open it for the for those who register for the webinar.
I'm going to go grab a drink. I'll be right back.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our member spotlights. We are waiting for a couple of people to join in, and then we'll get started here in a few minutes. Thank you guys so much for joining and getting to know one of our organizations, My Little Horse Listener, which is an amazing program. And I'm going to, if you guys would like to, if you guys can go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great so we can get to know who's here. Hey, David. Hi, Tina. Hello, Jackie. Oh, there's somebody else that joined.
Oh, that's actually my husband.
Hi.
I'm just making sure.
He needs to learn too.
I think I was on the other computer, which doesn't have a microphone, and that was the second Liz, I think,
Okay.
on my desktop.
Oh, okay.
So I signed
Thanks
off.
for solving that mystery.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and rename you. May I have your name, please?
Gary. I can actually probably rename myself. I don't know why it shows as Liz here, but yeah.
Oh, 'cause I sent you the invite. That's why.
Okay.
So I'm just, welcome everybody. We're going to get started. If you guys can just give me a couple of minutes or moments. We are going to be sharing this to Facebook, as we have a lot of those within our network that like to watch these Facebook Lives, and as well in support of what we're doing for this organization, so they can get to know who My Little Horse Listener is and all they do. So if you want to give me a couple of moments. I hope everybody's doing good. We had a nice long weekend there with Labor Day. All right, guys, so we're about to go live. And for those of you watching, you are more than welcome to use the chat. You are more than welcome to ask questions. We will address them if you want to ask them as we are going through the webinar, or if you would like to wait for the Q&A question at the end, or session at the end, you are more than welcome to do that as well. And just wanted to prepare you guys before I click go live. And so we're going to get started now. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining our webinar today. We are doing a member spotlight, and the organization that we have for you today is going to be My Little Horse Listener. My Little Horse Listener is a registered nonprofit dedicated for the development of special and safe relationships between equines and young people. They started with an idea of having miniature horses, and I'm super excited to talk about all that you guys do with your organization and opening it to the public. And today we are joined with Liz Delfs and her husband, Gary Delfs. I will introduce myself first, and then I will go go ahead and give it over to Liz. My name is Teresa, and I am the Education, Communication, and Outreach Coordinator for the Coalition. And I'm really happy to have my little horse listener today for you guys. And so I will hand it over to Liz and to Gary to introduce yourself and get started with this amazing presentation on your organization.
Thank you so much, Terry. Hello, everybody. I'm Liz Delfs, and I've been so looking forward to this since Terry's invite of a few weeks ago, because I really love to talk about this program. I probably talk about it too much, and I'll probably have more fun talking about it than you might do in listening to me, but it is really a joyful program in a not so joyful time. I was thinking earlier how, the horses, that they don't know about COVID. They don't know about the elections coming up. They don't look the news. They don't follow themselves on social media. They do all the things that you need to do probably to have a happy day. So what I want to do in the time that I have with you is, as Terry said, give you a sense really of who we are and what we do and who we do it for, and how you could access it for yourself and or for the clients with whom you work. I'm going to be spending some time talking about the horses and the horse behavior. I don't want this to turn into a equine class of any sort, but I think to really understand our program and how it works or why it works, you have to understand a little bit about the horses. You certainly don't have to be a horse person. I never had a horse until 5 years ago. Everything that I've learned about the horses, well, I would say most of it has been from the horses themselves. Okay, so for this journey for the next few minutes, I am going to use the PowerPoint, and I have a lot of pictures. It's easier sometimes to tell the story of what we do through pictures. There'll be numerous children that are in some of these pictures, and these are children who have been in some of our other programs or have been volunteers, with one very careful exception. We don't have photos of the children who are from the domestic violence programs. We're very protective of their privacy. Here we are. Here's the team. As Terry mentioned, we are a 501(c), and we have all the trappings that go along with that, as many of you probably do as well. You have a board of directors, we have strategic plans, we have certainly budgets. We have an interesting and growing and very diverse donor base that includes everybody from Robert Redford and his wife, who have taken an interest in this program, to an elderly woman in Santa Fe who every month dutifully sends us checks. We don't know why, we don't ask why. We thank her every month. We send her pictures of the horses, and she continues to support us. We also have the support of the Awesome Foundation, which is a really awesome foundation. They are very well named. They support innovative ideas with that have a short-term type of impact. So we are fortunate to have their support, and we are indeed innovative. So again, despite our formal 501(c) and all that, we are basically a family-run operation. My husband is on this call, and he and I run this together along with volunteers. As we get more funding, I'd like to expand and have more staff so we can grow more. But right now, it's basically us. We're going into our 5th year. We estimate that we've served probably about 400 children and families up to this point. We couldn't do anything without the team that you see in front of you, who are doing what they love to do best, which is eating. And let me just give you a little thumbnail sketch of them, because you're going to see them pop up again throughout the rest of the PowerPoint, and they each bring something very different to this table. The one on the far left is the donkey. Her name is Serafina. She is the superstar of the show. She is by far the most popular, the one that especially little girls just gravitate to her. She is a rescue. She had a not so happy life before she came here, but here she is. Next to her is Melly. Melly is a mule. Melly turned out also to be a rescue, although we didn't know it at the time. We got her from a farm in North Carolina. And by the time she got here, our vet was horrified at her condition. He told us that she probably suffered a great deal when she was there. My guess is that they were expecting a donkey. We had actually ordered a donkey, and she turned out to be a mule. And on the, the scheme of things, sometimes mules don't always rank near the top. But we've had her now for almost 2 years. We got her when she was a baby. And one of our volunteers has renamed her Miss Sassy Pants. And I think that's a really good description of her. And we actually probably put up with more than maybe we should from her, simply because we're so happy to see her come into her own. Standing next to Melly is Thor and Hot Dog. Thor is the white horse, and then Hot Dog is the brown horse. And you will definitely see them again through this PowerPoint. Unlike the other two, these two are not rescues. These two were born and bred to be show horses. So I don't know if they quit or if they were fired, but that career was kind of short-lived for the both of them. So they come with a bit of an attitude and a bit of a confidence that we probably will never see with the other two, who had much more difficult beginnings. I'm going to start off with what I find is the most frequently asked question of all the frequently asked questions. And that is, what is a miniature horse? How did this happen? That we have this, you can see this full-size horse on your left and this miniature horse on the right. These two are not my horses. By the way, I borrowed this picture because I don't own a large horse, but I wanted to help you out a little bit by seeing that the difference in them, that these guys are less than 3 feet tall, the ones that we have. There are dogs who are as big as or bigger than they are. They started, as best we could tell, just to give a little history on it, because I think it does become relevant. In the 1600s and in Europe, the children of royalty liked playing with small ponies. And so whoever it was that bred horses at that time, they started breeding smaller and smaller horses. So it's basically selective breeding. And if you keep breeding a small horse or small pony with another small pony, 4 or 5 generations down, you're going to get something who looks like this. Well, they had their time as kind of playmates, for the wealthy. And then, like often toys and playmates, they get tossed aside and they're not quite so popular anymore. And I don't know what happened to them in Europe, but I do know what happened to them here in the US. And they were imported around the early 1800s. And their history here has really been a mixed bag of both tragedy and glory. There have been periods of time when they've been very popular. Again, they were in shows. They had a great value to them. And then there are times when most of them were sent to slaughterhouses, or when we had coal mines, they would work in the coal mines. They're very sturdy little things. So my theory on it, as I say, it's based on nothing, but it's just based on my theory on what I've observed with them, is that while we have successfully bred the height out of these horses, we haven't bred the horse out of the horse, right? They are 100% horse. They think like a horse. I was going to say they talk like one. They communicate like one. They are affectionate or not affectionate in the way horses can be. And I think the most important factor is that they learn like a horse. They don't learn like a dog. And the reason why that's so important is that we want the kids who come and the families who come into our program to develop a good relationship with the equine of their choice. And that can't happen if you don't understand how it is that they learn. And that's our job, to meet the horse where they are. We can't expect the horse to try and figure us out, although there is a theory that horses figure us out after about 5 minutes. And I sometimes think that's true. Okay. The programs. Let me go through the programs that we have. We do more than work in the domestic violence arena, although I think that's the most important work that we do. We started as a reading program, and we spent really the first 3.5 years focusing on reading. The idea was that it would be not exclusively for, but I was primarily concerned with children who had reading disorders, who never and didn't want to read aloud because they would feel judged, they weren't confident of their reading skills and so forth. And a horse can be a very safe animal to read to. There's a wonderful video on our website where we have a 12-year-old who talks about why she likes to read to horses and how it really reduces so much stress for her. So we did that for a while. We still do. It's a very popular program. We partner with the Reading Quest in the Santa Fe community, which is an excellent tutoring program. We've partnered with Girls Inc. During non-COVID times. They send out busloads of little girls to read. And the horses kind of start shaking their hooves when they hear that. And the donkey is like, yes, bring it on. She loves to listen. We have a new program now at the Santa Fe Public Library. It'll actually start next summer. Hopefully we'll be out of COVID within, called Tales and Tales or Tales by Tales or something like that, kind of a play on horses' tails. The reading program led us to the domestic violence program, and I'll explain that in a little bit. We've also programmed or partnered with the Santa Fe Recovery Center with young moms recovering from substance abuse and their children, ages 5 and under. We have a new partnership, which I'm really excited to start, with Scott's House, which is a hospice, the only hospice house here in Santa Fe. And we would be then going out to the hospice house, and we do travel, and we'd be working with children and adults who are near the end of life. We have the Domestic Violence Survivors Program, which is why we're all here. And then we have another program called the Good Ear Project, and it was the generosity of the Awesome Foundation. And then Robert Redford kicked in on this one. It attracted him. I haven't done the program yet, but I can guarantee you that I'm going to make this program happen, because I'm not going to Robert Redford and telling him that we didn't make it happen, or to the Awesome Foundation. And that's basically a way where we want the donkey, who you met in the other slide, we want her to be the ambassador for peace in the home. We want her to go out into the community to share resources. Our hope is to attract victims who do not yet acknowledge or realize that they are victims, and don't want to talk to anybody about it. Our experience with Donkey has told us that people talk to her, they use those very long ears that she has, and they tell her things they often don't tell anybody else. So we want to try and leverage that. How do we get from reading to domestic violence? This is a photograph of Hot Dog back when he was younger. This is when we first started our program, and we went out to a Reading Quest. It was a tutoring program for all the children had reading difficulties. And it was a very long, hot afternoon. And one of the things, we've learned many things, but one of the first things that we learned is that the horses are not particularly great listeners when it comes to a child reading a book. The kids don't know that. The kids love it, but we know it. And the horse is fidgety. If you look closely at Hot Dog, you can see he's not even looking at the child or the book. He's probably looking at the photographer. I have my arms around his neck for a reason, to keep him still. So the afternoon went on like that until this little girl came, and she was terrified. She was terrified, not of the horse, she was terrified to read. So she sat down on the rock that's similar to what you see here. And she had a book that she had been practicing. So all the kids practiced with their book before they came. And she could barely get the first word out. It was a whisper. And I could still see her. She was so terrified. It was heartbreaking to see how reading had become such a trauma for her. Well, Hot Dog, right? He stops fidgeting, he moves closer to her, and he puts his head right next to hers, like he's trying to listen. Her voice was so soft, you could hardly hear it. So I noted that. It's like it kind of blew me away. And then the next kid came, who read in a more normal voice and was more relaxed, and Hot Dog went back, to his fidgeting. But it was a sign. I don't know if he was telling us something, but there was certainly a message that was going on there. But being a slow learner, we had to get a lot more messages than this before it really dawned on us these weren't just flukes, that there's something going on with these horses that could be really helpful to people. Okay, here we have Serafina. I mentioned before how she liked reading. What happens here is basically how I got to Esperanza. This was, I would call it the icing on the cake, the straw that broke the camel's back, whatever it was like, wake up, do something here. You can make these horses and donkey and mule be more useful than they have been. So you can see the picture on the left. There's Serafina with the little girl, happens to be my granddaughter. And you can tell Serafina is right there, right? She's got her head there. I'm barely having to hold her. She may even be looking at the pictures in the book. She could stand there all day and she could listen. But that alone wasn't, I mean, that was cool. It's great that she could do that. But what became spectacular about Serafina was when Girls Inc. came one day. And you could see the picture on the right, the little Girls Inc. And then that's a volunteer who happens to be my daughter. So I said it was a family business, and it is. When she's here, we put her to work too. Well, Girls Inc. comes out in large groups. And if you are familiar with children, maybe ages 5 to 9, you know that when they see an animal like this, or you would assume that, they become really excited and they start yelling and screaming. And, you know, it's almost like a circus for them. Well, there's this one little girl there who was not part of the happy yelling and screaming group. I guess she was about 6. And she was holding back. She was by herself. She looked very, very lonely and very lost. And so we're all in this, the girls are all crowding around the donkey, which is something you could do with the donkey, not so much with the horse. Horses are a little more nervous about it, but the donkey, you know, she'll let the girls just hang off of her. And then here's this little girl who's on the outside. She's not part of this inner group. And the donkey, all of a sudden, just walked over to where this little girl was, who was all alone, and just stuck like glue to her. She stood next to her for the whole time. The little girl was delighted. I mean, she was so joyful, she was almost in tears. The other little girls then, of course, come running over. And now this little girl is the most popular one ever. And I thought, you know, how did the donkey know to do that? I mean, what kind of perception do these animals have that we're lucky if we could get a glimpse of it? But anyway, that and the fact that I had recently stopped practicing law. I was a corporate lawyer for a long time. And I stopped in June of 2019. And I think that July, I took myself over to Esperanza, which was a center here. Most of you are probably familiar with it, here in Santa Fe. And I wanted to pose my idea to them that, you know, we could come on out and, you know, let's see what happens. And they were understandably kind of skeptical. And I'll get into that a little bit more. But nonetheless, they did come out. We did start a program, and I'll sort of unpack that program for you as you go on. But I want to just talk about what we have that's pending. And that would be Henry Brutus, an amazing guy who I met thanks to Terry and his Las Cruces shelter. He and I were brainstorming about how could we work together. Las Cruces is 4 hours from here. And Henry, I have to credit him for it, came up with the idea of maybe we could have like a 2-day trip and we could bring staff who also need a break up to Santa Fe, along with some of the clients and their children. And they could spend mornings at the horse pen, and then they could also kind of learn and explore Santa Fe. And so I've got some money that I could help out with that with Henry, thanks to the Awesome Foundation. And I think Henry was going to try and do some fundraising himself. The Goodyear Project, I already talked about that. Solace, which is a rape crisis and sexual abuse center here in Santa Fe. I've met with their executive director, and she's on board with wanting us to work together. So we have some exciting stuff, you know, on the drawing boards if COVID would just go away. Okay, I want to focus in and unpack Esperanza a little bit, because I think that's probably the most relevant for you. As I may have mentioned to you, that I had to persuade Esperanza on this one. I had met with all of their therapists at the time, and they were, you know, they hadn't done this before. I hadn't done this before. It's not been done a whole lot, and they were understandably protective of their clients. So I suggested they come out and they just see, you know, what it is, because the head therapist there, Mariana, who's an amazing, she's one of the best therapists I think I've ever seen. She was kind of like the leader, and I knew that if Mariana was on board, then the program would happen. And I don't think Mariana had ever seen a horse before, much less one this size. But anyway, out they come to the horse's little corral here, large corral. And Serafina, once again, she makes a beeline for Mariana. And it was almost like she knew, this is the one I have to woo. I have to really, convince this one, that what we have going on is a good thing here. I mean, it's easy sometimes to sort of, project too much onto what they might be thinking or doing. But, that donkey picked out Mariana, and by the end of the visit, we had to peel them apart. They were just absolutely, again, the donkey totally stuck to Mariana. Mariana was enthralled. In fact, she still occasionally comes out and visits with them, although she's left Esperanza. So I share that little story in case those of you out there are also, are thinking about joining up with us. And if you come out here and if the donkey makes a beeline for you, now you know what that's all about. Let me unpack a little bit how it works with Esperanza. And I want to start by saying too, that this is the program that worked with that particular program, that it's not the only way to do it. We are pretty flexible, and there are various ways to do it. It's just the way we chose to do it here, and it was the way that we felt would be the most effective. And so that's one family and one child at a time with their therapist would accompany them. We did not feel that, this is not a zoo, it's not a petting zoo, it's not a playground. We didn't want groups of children coming out. We felt this had to be too individualized. The therapeutic goals would then be articulated. It would be modified. I don't need to know, I don't want to know, and the horses don't ask questions as to what the specifics are on kids' situations. But the therapist would tell me just generally, well, this family is working on this, or this child is working on that. I would come up with activities that would be targeted, that would somehow help to, or hope to meet what that goal was, or to encompass that goal within the activity. And we have lots and lots of activities that the horses can do. They are incredibly flexible. We would have a follow-up where we would talk afterwards, and we would talk about how it went, what went well, what didn't. There would be things I would see that the therapist didn't see, simply because physically I was in the horse pen with that child at that time, and then vice versa. So our target was to do it once a week for 3 months. I felt that if a child could, and a family could get invested enough, and there really does need to be that sort of investment that happens. And it doesn't always happen. I mean, some kids don't like horses. They're not, enthralled by them. Other kids can't get enough of them. It really depends. But anyway, between the fall of 2019 and the spring of 2020, we had about 30 visits from those families. Here's where I'm really getting down to the nitty-gritty and unpacking it. And what I'll share with you are the questions that came to me from the therapist, or the requests. Can your horse teach this child how to be more sensitive? Okay, that was one that came up more than once. Again, I didn't know why the child, I can make guesses, but I didn't know what the specifics were of why this child was so insensitive and why he was being mean to his siblings. But what we did is we came up with Thor, who himself could probably learn a little more sensitivity too. But Thor, yeah, he's a great horse, and he is a brave horse, and he's now the head of the horse pen. He got promoted, or they promoted him. But he had this fear, and his fear was in jumping over very small little gullies. We take them for walks a lot. And so Thor would come to like just a screeching halt. And he wouldn't go over his gullies. And so we worked with the child, and we worked with Thor, and we had the child think about, why is it that this horse isn't jumping over this? Do you think he's afraid of something? You think something maybe bad happened? So what it did is it resulted in the child having to put himself into the head and the feelings of another living being. And I think that's probably a good requisite for becoming a more sensitive person. So he worked with the horse, and lo and behold, the horse eventually did start to jump over gullies. And my feeling is that the reason why is that the horse grew to trust the child and to trust the boy, and that he knew that the boy was patient with him, and that enabled him to feel confident enough So you could see here how, you know, the horses help the kids and the kids help the horses as well too. Okay, the next one, this is very common. It could be either a she or a he. They're withdrawn. You know, can you help bring this child out of themselves more? And the great one for that, again, is Donkey. It's, you know, she is the good listener. She has the kind of face, you know, you want to talk to. And so what I did, I'll share with you what I did with one incident of this adorable little boy who, I guess he was about 9. So I remember he was a gorgeous, really sweet kid, but he didn't talk. Not that he couldn't talk, he just chose not to talk. And, you know, his mother was concerned about that. And she said, well, that's how he is at home too. And I certainly knew he wasn't going to talk to me. So what I did, and we use a lot of intuition here. I rely on that, both my intuition and my husband's intuition of let's try this or let's try that. And that's just part of the reason why I love this program so much, is that you could be creative with it. And our intuition here was basically to get out of the way, to, you know, have this child be with this donkey in private time, you know, to leave them alone, never mind all the activities or the games or, you know, the goals or objectives, you know, simply to have them spend their time together and see what happens. And then sure enough, that kid was in there for about an hour, you know, talking and whispering to the donkey. I mean, I hated to interrupt it, but I had to. And so, you know, I mean, I just love when these kinds of things happen. Did the child go home and start talking a lot to his parents? I don't know if that's what happened, but I do know for that period of time, and again, horses are very much in the present and in the now, and that child was in the present with that horse, and that child was talking. Sometimes it's as simple as the family needs to have fun together. We actually saw this more with the recovery center, where the parenting relationship had been severely disrupted by the addiction that that mom may have had. And so we would, what the counselors there asked us to do is, you know, come up with activities that they could do together so the parent can engage in, you know, in taking care of their child and playing with their child and actually having fun with them. Because I think the recovery center, the facilities are really excellent there, but it is a quasi sort of institutional setting. And we have a really nice bucolic setting. We have a lot of property and we have, you know, it's just a really happy place for the horses and the kids. And so they love coming out here. So there were some times where that was simply all that we did. Okay. This is my favorite one. And I would hear this all the time. More than half of the children that were here had, the way it was described to me, was having difficulty in asserting themselves and being more assertive. And can the horse help with that? And the answer, short answer to that is yes, but usually not in the ways that people expect. There is a long history, particularly in New Mexico, of training horses and treating horses in this dominating kind of a way, where you go in and you're the boss of the horse pen and you are gonna, you know, they are gonna listen to you and so forth. And that's not how we do things at all here. We have a much more gentler way. We only use positive training. We have a great deal of respect for the horses, because I believe that when a horse respects you, then they will treat you as a leader, but you have to earn it and you don't get it simply by being a human. So that's the kind of thing that we impart to them. And the whole stubborn thing as well too. When a donkey or a mule in particular doesn't want to do something, it's not because they're stubborn. Stubborn is something we humans are. From the donkey and the mule's perspective, it's simply they don't, what you're asking them to do doesn't make any sense. If you're asking a horse to do something and they don't do it, it's often because they don't understand. They want to please, but you're not able to communicate them in the right way. So I consider these words banned, both stubborn and dominate, because the last thing I want for a kid who needs to learn how to be more assertive and think, well, okay, I'll come in and I'll pull that donkey and I'll tell that horse what to do and so forth. That's not what we mean by assertive, and that's not what the horses need. It really is more of a leadership kind of thing. And one of the best ways to do that is for a child to, we teach the child how to walk the horses, not like dogs, but on a lead. And that's something where, you know, you can't pull the horse. I mean, because they're small, physically you probably could, but that's not how to walk a horse, is by pulling them along. So they learn how to establish leadership with that horse, because if you let the horse be the leader, you'll find yourself, in a cornfield somewhere. So the child has to learn to establish a level of leadership / assertiveness that works for that relationship. So I always, when a therapist tells me that this child needs to work on being more assertive, I'm like, yes, I have got. And then again, the simplicity, and this is where we have to learn to not be control freaks here. Sometimes, and this actually was said to me by a therapist, I just wanted to learn to relate to another living thing. So if you look at this, on the left here, that was the mule back when she was a baby. And those children there are volunteers from a middle school that used to come out here. And the mule is extremely lovable. She's always in your face. She still is. I mean, she gets very attached to humans, and it's almost impossible not to relate to her. And the same is true for the child on the other side. I mean, they're about the same level, the same height, a child and a miniature horse. So that's kind of cool. Okay, the impact. I get this all the time. Does it work? Does it help? My board in particular, and I can certainly understand that, want to know, well, what's the impact of it? What's the difference? I once had a board member ask me, well, why not a duck? Why a horse? And so, while I feel sometimes a little annoyed at these questions, I understand that people want to know, is this just a fun, petting zoo kind of thing, or does it really make a difference in people's lives? Well, it's the name for this would be called equine facilitated learning. And if you really want to see people's eyes glaze over, use that, to describe, what you're doing. So I tend to stay away from that, but it's really, if you have to put it in a box somewhere, that's the box it would be in. And it's a very new field. There's about 30 studies out there. Each study is very limited in scope, somewhat flawed. Each study is for about one program, and it cites all the improvement and self-esteem and assertiveness and control, feelings of peace, and so forth. And it's basically based on qualitative interviews. And, I don't mean to scoff that. I mean, I should do that. I should do more of that than I do. But I tend to rely more, I have in the past anyway, on what I see. And that's probably the lawyer in me that does that. And the things that we see that happen right in front of us, one of the most astounding things was it was a child who was very withdrawn with severe autism, who we were at a camp for children with disabilities and their caretakers in Taos. And this child was under a blanket for the entire day before we came. And then we showed up, and we had Hot Dog actually with us. And I think forget the other one, but I remember Hot Dog in particular, because this child just glued right onto Hot Dog. People see things, or kids see things in that horse that adults don't see. Yeah, he's a great horse, and I just love him to death. But Hot Dog likes to have things his way, and takes a lot more convincing than any of the others. But we've had kids that absolutely love that horse. One of the other things we had, and this was the Esperanza program, it was an 11-year-old who came out here, and she looked like she was 20. I mean, she had a face full of makeup, heels, kind of provocative clothing. And she spent some time with the horses, and she really did attach to them. And then she started coming out, and she looked like an 11-year-old again. She was a kid again. The makeup was off her face. She was dressed in jeans and sneakers. And so, that's not the kind of thing maybe that, shows up in a quantitative, research study that's published in a journal, but that was pretty meaningful. When a parent tells me that, well, he just acts nicer at home, after he's with one of the horses here, that has validity to me. But the one thing that this makes me keep going with this program, I told you there would be a picture of a child who was from a domestic violence program, and this is it. This picture actually appeared in the Santa Fe New Mexican when they did a story on our program here. And this little girl, during the 3 months she was here, she must have moved at least 4 times, which I guess is not uncommon, given what her family was going through. And then it was towards the end of it, and she said to me, well, she said, when I'm in my new bedroom, you know, the latest in a series, she said, I pretend that hot dog is with me when I'm afraid. And so that told me that children carry this with them, you know, when they're not here. And if for no other reason, to me, that's a reason for us to keep on going. Okay, payment, does it cost? Maybe I should have addressed this first. We have charged programs that had funding that have come out. We have never charged an individual who has come out. I'm now rethinking that, not because I think people have a lot of money to pay us, but because I think that there's a value. When something is free, it's more like a playground, you know, or a zoo or a free zoo. And I think there's more value when you have a little more skin in the game, when you reciprocate more and you give something back. So what I'm going to start asking people to do is to bring a bale of hay with them. That way they can feed their favorite horse. These horses eat a lot of bales of hay. It's actually very helpful for us to do that. A bale of hay is $15. If they don't want to put hay in their car, they could pay the $15. Knowing me, I'll negotiate it down to a bag of carrots or apples or something if that becomes a problem for folks. Okay, I'll wrap up here. Before I do, I just want to make sure that you know that while I've talked about mostly, you know, kids and families here, this program is not limited to that. I think Henry is onto something good when he talks about some relief for his staff coming out. I've had a volunteer here who was going through the loss of her mother, and she would come and she would sit for hours in the horse pen, just watching them, that there can be a peace that comes from these animals. And I think during this particular time, you know, when we start opening up again, I don't think it's going to be like, you know, Disney World in New Mexico when, oh, great, we're all open, we're all going to have a great time. I think there's going to be a big period of adjustment. So I would encourage folks who are, you know, in the area or within driving distance to send me a text or an email. I answer to everything. And we'll see if there's something we can work out. And if you're working in a program and you feel you have clients that might benefit as well too, reach out to me as well. Okay, Terry, I'm done. I don't know if questions have come in or not, but I'd be happy to answer.
Well, I have a couple of questions. I don't see any questions right now on the webinar, but for those of you on the webinar, please go ahead and put your questions in the chat, or those of you on Facebook watching. I do have a question. So I remember going back in, I think before COVID-19, to go see you and spend some time with your organization and learning all that you guys do. It's an amazing facility. And for those of you watching, I just want to let you guys know, when we went up there, a prior colleague of mine, Shauna, and I went up there in Santa Fe, and the area is absolutely extremely peaceful. It's just the scenery around it is absolutely amazing. And with that being said, I know that you are hoping to work with organizations across, you know, New Mexico, like La Casa with Henry. How do people from the public get a hold of you? Is it open to those who are in the public and would want to come and bring their children there for a 1 hour time frame? Is it open to other people, or do they have to go through a domestic violence shelter and be a part of that to take part in your organization?
No, they do not. I wouldn't go so far as to saying we are just open widely to the public. I just purchased some liability insurance. And so I made sure that I told that the insurance adjuster, you know, it's not like, you know, you're like an amusement park where anybody can come. But what happens is people call me and they'll explain to me why it is that they want to come. And I don't think in the 5 years we've been doing this, I've ever turned anybody down or said no. I got a call the other day it was a woman who has a 39-year-old son who is on the autism spectrum. And she said, you know, he's very lonely. He's very high functioning. I mean, she said, I know it's not doesn't seem what you normally do. And I said, give me a call back when we open up, you know, let's see what we can do. So anybody can call. You know, I don't have billboards out there. I don't really, you know, want to. I don't want to be deluged with people, and I don't want to grow faster then I can accommodate that, because then I start giving lousy service. I'm always looking at grants and always looking for more funding and always asking for money. And if I could get more staff, then, I could do that. But, we haven't reached that point yet. So what I would say to people who are listening is, don't hesitate. Don't be cautious about it. Give me a call, talk about what, you think that you might need or what might work. And, if you can come out, that would be great.
No, that's fantastic. And thank you for clarifying that, because I know that we're probably going to have questions. Can I take part in that, or can I go there? Can you also let us know, maybe, I know that you posted your phone number as well as your email address, and I also went ahead and put your link to your website on the chat and as well as Facebook.
Thank you.
Let us know where you're actually located in Santa Fe, or, your address and things like that, or...
Yeah, I deliberately keep it off of the website, and that's for safety reasons. There's some creepy people out there, and I really am very protective. The horses are on our property and we're right here, but I'm very protective of them. But our address, I will tell people on this call, we live not far from the Santa Fe Opera. We live about 10 minutes away from the plaza, and the address is 63 Tano West.
So you guys are located in Santa Fe.
We are very much in Santa Fe. Yeah, we've had people come from as far as Taos. One time came down. I mean, that to me seems like a long drive, but then people do drive long distances, in New Mexico. We have a trailer. We do go on the road. At times there certainly would be limits to how far we would go, but we're not. I mean, I like the programs to do them here because the horses are more comfortable here, than they are out in a strange place. But, can't always get what you want. That's what I tell them. So sometimes you have to, you're going to have to be where you'd rather not be.
Absolutely understand that. And with that, following that question, I know you and I had this discussion prior, but maybe somebody might, wonder, we have so many organizations across the state, and you guys are one of our members. And so maybe if one of our organizations, say in Artesia, or just like Henry and Las Cruces, what if, is it an option for you to travel, or is it better for your organization to have maybe that organization travel here and go to you in Santa Fe, or even if it's like a local organization, say right down the road from you? Is that a difficult is that difficult for you guys to do? Is that an option at all?
Yeah, it's always an option, for sure. There's very little that's off the table when it comes to this program, which is one of the reasons why I love it. Right now, in fact, this is what one of the money that Robert Redford gave us was specifically to fix the horse trailer. So it would be better for us to go in the community with it. Problem we have now is it's a 2-horse trailer. And then the donkey, based on the trauma that she had in her earlier life, which we have not been able to get her past, will not go in the trailer. And we would so love to bring her because, she's so good at what she does. So, we have the flexibility. It's always preferable here, but that doesn't mean that we can't talk about, going somewhere else. I mean, we've been to literacy fairs, we've been to recovery fairs. I had mentioned the camp for, children with disabilities in Taos. So, we're not rigid, let's put it that way.
Oh no, that's good. That's fantastic. Cause you never know, maybe it's not feasible, to travel, or vice versa, so I was just wondering if it was difficult for you, if that was even an option for your organization. But
it's definitely an option. We have a portable corral, by the way, too, specifically for that purpose. It's a hot pink corral, and we can set it up anywhere. So we don't have to, when we go someplace, we don't have to stand there and hold the horses. We can let them loose and they can walk around in the corral, and then kids can come in and interact with them, as well too. So yeah, we have the resources for that.
Okay, fantastic. And well, I definitely hope, that after doing this membership spotlight, hopefully a lot of our organizations will reach out to you and learn more about all that you do, and maybe create some type of collaboration or partnership with you. I really enjoyed my time being there with Shauna. I think we went for like a few minutes just to see what your organization was about, and we ended up staying there about an hour and a half.
We'll do that to you. Thank you, Terry. We're a resource that's hiding in plain sight,
Yeah.
in some ways, and it's hard to hide with 4 equines. But so we appreciate your helping us get the word out to, folks who we want the word to go out to.
Oh, absolutely. And you would prefer also, if they contact you, to schedule an appointment with you to visit rather than just pop up. Is that right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we don't do pop-ups. That's one thing we are rigid about that. We don't do pop-ups. So yeah, just, give us a call. Again, a text is better because cell phone is so miserable out here, or an email, and I'll get back within 24 hours. So sure.
Awesome. And one last question. I know that I'm full of questions just because I love your organization so much.
Yeah.
So you did mention that you have a lot of, the programs are for children, but are they also for, women who have experienced domestic violence and men who have, experienced domestic violence as well? Is that open for them to come and schedule an appointment with you to also get a session in with the miniature horses?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. I mean, we're not, and certainly with the Esperanza program, the moms that came out, I think benefited. I mean, I can't think of anybody on the planet who actually couldn't benefit, including all of us, from spending time with these guys. But yeah, they can. I mean, I like that the model where there's a therapist that's involved, because then I'm not flying blind so much. But on the other hand, I can't limit it to just that, because there's a lot of people, a lot of women in particular, who could benefit from this, who don't have access to therapists. And so, not that the donkey is a substitute for it, but I think the outcome, this isn't a therapeutic program in that regard. The horses are not therapists. I've never met a horse that is a therapist, by the way. It's sort of a misnomer. But I think the outcome of what we do is therapeutic, and can be helpful. So yeah, long answer to a short question, yes.
That's totally fine. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this Facebook Live and webinar for our members, as well as those within our community, to learn more about what you do. I really do appreciate it. And for those of you joining us on the webinar and Facebook Live, I already posted the website, as well as I will post as much information as I can for you guys about My Little Horse Listener. If you have any questions or concerns, you can always email me or contact me at terry@nmcadv.org. Or you can also contact Liz and her organization, and I will post that as well for you guys to have access. And thank you again for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Terry. Take care.
Absolutely.
Bye, everyone.